Well, hey there, you're on the internet, I have some free time, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie nib nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at an ink today, shall we? Now, today's ink, my camera is doing something weird with. It's turning it quite just like blue-ish, whereas it is actually very, very purple. It's an ink I have in sample form. I remembered somebody mentioning it at some point, so couldn't remember if it was an actual request. I do remember I didn't have it at the time, but I do now. It's Private Reserve's DC Supershow Violet. Yeah, I have electric DC blue, which I absolutely love. I have a bottle of it. I also have it in like 2 different kinds of cartridges. However, I recently tried DC Supershow green, and that was a train wreck. So I was a little hesitant to try this. However, it's really not bad if you like a bold purple. Yeah, this one's bold. It's not like bright like in your face, but it's rich and it's intense. Yeah. So, 2 pens I used were these. This is a MonteVerde Impressa with a 1.1 stub. And this is a Pilot Metropolitan with a Japanese medium. So they're usually much more like a Western fine. Okay. Now, you know what, let's start with the chromatography, just because it's here. Now, here's the chromatography as it's meant to be done, where you put the line of ink and instantly drop it in the water. You can vaguely make out where that first little bit was put, but it's really fleeing from water. Here you get more like an Easter purple, and then here into a darker purple, and then up at the edge it's very nearly like blue. Here's where I let it dry. There's really not a whole lot of difference. Maybe the dot got a little bit darker. It's very largely the same. Alright, now Private Reserve is known for having very saturated inks. There's a lot of ink in their ink. That's definitely the case here. So I wanted to see if I could find anything that was comparable. So here's Supershow Violet, and here's Bay State Concord Grape, and it's actually terrifyingly similar. Yeah, that's weird. I also thought I'd include another ink that was actually called Violet, which is Ackerman number 13, Simplicite Violet. Yeah, 13, I think. As you can tell, this one's actually a little more red, like actual red. This one's a little cooler. I mean, color-wise cool, not like, oh, it's awesome. Anyways, moving on. Also thought I'd include Noodler's Purple, which is actually fairly similar. This one's maybe a little bit more blue. And Diamine Imperial Purple, which I'd say the lighter areas through here, like you see these bits up through here, very similar to this. The darker parts are a bit more blue. So there you go, there are your comparables. And I wanted to see what this ink could stand up against, and the answer is pretty much nothing. Now, I didn't bother to circle them because they're pretty obvious. Water decimated ink, but also kind of brought out the pink. 1/3 bleach solution just sort of, it was almost like taking an eraser to pencil. It was really just leaving. Ammonia pen flush, again, mostly turned to pink and was really getting it moving. Hydrogen peroxide, again, pink, moving, and then eating through the paper. It had to be sopped up quickly. Alright, paper test, top down in density, Clairefontaine, 90 grams per square meter. Yeah, as you can see, there is some shading, not a ton, but some, at least on here. That Japanese medium took 14 seconds to dry, that 1.1 took 23, but when we look at these smears, I mean, look at how solid that color is. That's just like intense, solid color. And the thing is, heavily saturated inks actually take a bit longer to dry because it's, you know, like all the liquid has to sort of find its way through all the particulates and into the paper. So that is something that happens. But it is very well behaved. Oh, but yeah, so not only is it very saturated, it's also slightly wet. I'd say it's a 5.5, maybe a 6, but confidently a 5.5. It is a little wet. But other than that, very well behaved. No bleed, no feather, no spread, no echo, no sheen. All good in that regard. But like many heavily saturated inks with no water resistance, it'll make a mess. Because I mean, it turned the whole thing pink. The dots are there and very clear. And actually, I was surprised this much remained given the chromatography. But again, it's very patchy. Like, a lot of it's gone. Not ideal. Next up is Fabriano Eco Qua, 85 grams per square meter. I tend to like this paper because it can handle inks that other papers tend to struggle with. This one, it really impressed me. I mean, here we get a lot of shade. Oh, there we go. Yeah, we get a little bit of this, like, I called it dark gold sheen. And it's a very nice contrast. This gold with this rich, intense purple. It's very fascinating. We don't get a ton of shading in the writing. We do get some. Not a lot, but some. The Japanese medium took 16 seconds. The 1.1 stub took 25. But again, if we look at just how much ink is in that ink, and I mean, it's wet flowing. And honestly, I could have expected worse dry times given the circumstances, but yeah. No bleed, no feather, no spread. I don't think there's any echo, really. That was just me kind of scratching through the paper, trying to ensure I could get some more sheen. So that one little dot is human error. But again, yeah, I mean, lots of saturation and no water resistance. You're going to get this big pink mess. And then what remains is actually really patchy, and that Japanese medium is super gone. Next up is Rhodia, 80 grams per square meter, where we sort of lose a little bit of the shading that we gained in the Fabriano, but we still have some. The Japanese medium took 14 seconds to dry. The 1.1 took 22. Again, so saturated. There's a lot of ink in this ink. Fairly well behaved. There's no bleed, no feather, no spread, no echo, no sheen. Very well behaved in that regard. All good. Flow is steady. I mean, the slightly wet, it didn't dry on the nib very quickly is what I'm trying to say, and not expressing clearly. Now, again, it really dyed the page. The stuff that remains is, it's fairly light. It's not easy to read. It's kind of patchy. Now, next up is Tomoe River paper, which is known for drawing out shading and sheen and dry times and echo, because it's such thin paper. This is really, really thin paper. But we do get some shading, and we get a little bit of a halo effect, and once again we get this gold sheen in the halo. And actually we get it in the writing as well, and particularly with the stub, because it does put down more ink. But yeah, it's harder to get on camera than in the scrubby, but honestly, I was expecting 30 plus seconds of dry time. We got 29, came in just under the wire. However, because I stopped counting at 30, generally. Now, this Japanese medium took 19 seconds to dry, which is kind of long for a Japanese medium, but it's wet flowing, heavily saturated, and Tomoe River. So it's logical, it follows logic. Now, I put my thumb in something that wasn't quite dry, and then put it down on the paper again. So that's me. That's not feathering, that's not weirdness. That's just me being an impatient idiot. And again here. But yeah, anyways. There's no bleeding, no feathering, no spread. There is some echo, though, because this is a fairly dark, fairly rich purple. And this paper is just so darn thin. Yeah, it's something to be aware of, again, particularly with that 1.1 stub, because it is a broader nib, it is putting down more ink, it's wetter, you know, it's... Yeah, if you're super sensitive to it, something to be aware of. Yeah, and this paper loves to let ink slide away when you add more water. And it kind of did. A lot of that is gone. Yeah, it dyed the page. And it's not very dark. The 1.1 is a little bit darker. In fact, the camera is darkening it up just a little bit. But yeah, it would not be the easiest thing in the world to recover. You should not look for purple. You should look for pink. And how motivated would you be? That'll be key. Now for the next 3 tests, I only use the Japanese medium, except to write the name. And this is the world's worst 20-pound copier paper. This stuff is awful. Now, let's compare line width. Line width there versus line width here. Got much broader. There is a good bit of spread. And as you might be able to tell, there is no shading left at all. However, as you probably can tell anyways, it is an intense purple. It is a very vibrant purple. It took 1.5 seconds to dry. We do get some feathering. Come on. Yeah. But it's not insane. You get some, it's kind of woolly, but it's not like big, like cactus spikes. Could be a lot worse. However, we do get this. A lot of spots of very near bleed. In fact, some fully came through. I just didn't go back and circle them, and I don't know why. But maybe a drier writing Japanese fine might do a little bit better, but... Now, as I have said several times this week, and yet I don't think I've proven it yet, this paper can really make ink freak out when you add water, and this is what I mean. I mean, it's practically overlapping, it's almost turning into chromatography paper, it's exploding. But yeah, generally, more absorbent papers tend to draw the ink in, make it harder to wash out. And here, I'm not sure that was to its advantage, because it just started to, like, explode outwards. Now, next up is Mead Notebook Paper. This is the kind of Mead Notebook Paper you'd find in, like, a 5-star spiral ring binder, or spiral notebook. Not the kind you'd find in, like, a composition notebook. And lately, this stuff has been feathering like crazy. And comparatively, it's not so bad, considering some of the things we've seen lately. But there is feathering. However, that could just be my mead, or, you know, who knows. But for the most part, it's really not too bad. Again, it's not distracting. It's not like tons of big stretching spikes coming off of it. Took 2 seconds to dry, and I hope you'll be able to see in the scrubby at least, it's an intense, rich color. It's very bold. If you want a bold purple, this one is definitely bold. And again, like I've said several times this week, but couldn't really prove, this paper also tends to freak out when you add water. This is what I mean by, like, hairy cactus monsters. I mean, that just exploded. But again, you see how, like, the purple is trying to release from the pink and it kind of can't? Yeah. That's what I mean by absorbent paper tends to draw the ink in, keep it from washing out. Doesn't want to leave. Doesn't want to let it go. Now, lastly is Moleskine Paper, which I hate because it is very poorly made and they make you pay a lot for it. It didn't do too well here. But honestly, pretty much nothing does lately. Now, there's very, very woolly texture. You get feathering. See that? Like the texture of the line right in, it's just not good. And there were a lot of spots of bleed. See how a lot of these dots are actually quite dark? They actually rendered onto the page below. That is not good. You don't like to see that. But the color is still very bright, still very intense and vibrant. I say here that the mildly wet flow is probably not helping, but yeah, this is fuzzy cactus monster territory. It's freaking out. That's not really what you want to see. That's hard to read. That would be very hard to recover. So, So, there you go. For your consideration, DC Supershow Violet. It is an intense purple, I will give you that. And like many private reserve inks, it is very saturated. On pretty premium inks, papers, I mean, like Tomoe River or Fabriano, although Fabriano is quite inexpensive, the Echo Qua stuff, you get this beautiful contrast of like this intense like royal purple and this like gold sheen, but it does take kind of long to dry comparatively because it is slightly wet and it is very saturated, so be prepared for that. However, if you love purple, this is such a purple. Definitely check it out. For your consideration from the Triple N Network, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe to the channel. And thanks for watching. Bye.